Hello and welcome to another one in our series of Every Superhero Needs a Sidekick. And today we've got Sahil from the brilliant team at ApprovalMax with us. Hi, Sahil.
Hi, Stephen.
And we're going to be exploring this Zero Preferred App Partner and 2020 award winner, in fact, 2021 award winner now as well. And we're going to be looking at what they do within the app stack and why we need this within our app stack in particular. I also want to tell you how we use it ourselves at FinanceBox to bring efficiency, accountability, and control into your workplace. So without further ado, hi Sahil, I'd like to welcome you on today. Why don't we start off with who are you? What is ApprovalMax? How long have you worked there? What do you like doing?
Yeah, hey, thanks, Stephen, for the introduction. Pleasure to be speaking with you today. And yeah, it's we won 2 awards back-to-back, 2020 and 2021 in the UK, and actually even in New Zealand we won the App Partner of the Year in 2020. So yeah, it's been a great year, and we are proud to be part of your superhero sidekicks. It's really really exciting for us to be able to support you in these series and actually support your clients in this initiative as well. So a little bit about myself. I am actually an accountant, so I understand the industry quite well. In fact, I'm working towards my CPA designation, so fingers crossed, hopefully the paperwork will be done soon. I've been in the Xero ecosystem for close to a decade. I started my career working for Xero, and since then I have been within a few different apps in the ecosystem as well. And over the last year, I joined ApprovalMax last year, and I've been helping accountants and bookkeepers or accountants and bookkeeping firms on the ApprovalMax partner journey, and to ensure they've got all the resources to be successful as ApprovalMax partners.
Brilliant, thank you. So let's unpack a little bit about ApprovalMax itself. What is ApprovalMax? Yeah,
so ApprovalMax, in simple terms, it's an app or a tool, some say it, a software, essentially that automates accounts payable and accounts receivable approvals. It is an integrated solution with Xero and also QuickBooks Online software, but basically it provides the possibility to eliminate paper-based approvals or email-based approvals for invoices, and makes the process much faster and more transparent for all the decision makers involved. Approvers, who are essentially the decision makers, can simply see and approve purchase orders or invoices in any way they prefer. So we've got options around a web app, a mobile app, and also a notification that gets sent by an email. Just got a simple button to approve an invoice. So it makes it very simple to approve an invoice on the go. So basically, if you've got the need for segregation of duties or delegated authorities, you'd be looking at ApprovalMax.
Amazing. So why do we need that? Why do we need to approve bills?
Yeah, so you need an app like ApprovalMax to automate your traditional processes. We've already sort of touched on that a little bit, but I also think a compelling reason for looking at ApprovalMax is to actually keep control over your spending. And it's clients and practices and partners like yourselves who have mentioned to us that actually ApprovalMax has become it's a phenomenal app to control when and how a business controls their spend or sort of manages their spending operations. If you think about a small business or a medium business, they don't necessarily want to lose control. They start with a passion where the owner turns that passion into a proper business. And so it's their baby, right? Which is why sometimes it becomes very difficult for them to lose control of some of the operations. And one such example is that they want to be involved in every decision when they're making payments against a supplier invoice. However, as we see the businesses growing and evolving, multiple suppliers getting involved, too many invoices coming through, it becomes very hard with such amount of paper and manual process to grow at that exponential rate. It becomes a hurdle in the growth, in fact. And it also, including the ability to actually track where those expenses are being incurred, how that spending and payments are being sort of incurred in general. But one of the good news is that with technology options these days, there is a way to digitize and automate and streamline these processes, including providing the ability for the business owner to be involved in the decision making. So they don't actually have to forego the full control. They can still be involved, but at the same time, and actually gradually having the comfort to delegate some elements of making payments and spending. By way of an example, they can say that anything under $500 can be approved by another individual in the business, and the business owner will still be involved and keep control of anything over that amount. That's just a very simple example. And I think that's where the need is, to be able to recognize that if you want to grow as a business, manual systems are just going to be a massive hurdle in that in the growth element, and the spending needs to be controlled effectively.
Amazing. So that's really key, actually. We part of this series is about bringing accounting superheroes to a business, but the main reason, as you've just said, is that business started because that founder had a superpower of their own to go and use, and I bet it wasn't accounting, unless you're me. And so to be able to release them from that burden, to be able to get them back onto what they do best, these tools are going to be really helpful to give them a bit more control, a bit more comfort in what's happening whilst they're doing what they do. What type of business is your ideal kind of client on the platform? Who's this for, really?
Yeah, that's a very good question. It's a very common question we get asked as well. What sort of industries you fit in well, and we usually say that it's based on a business need, so not necessarily a specific industry, although there are certain industries that obviously are a good fit. But I would say any business that has got lots of invoices coming through on a regular basis. So, I would say anything more than about 30 or 40 invoices a month, if you're receiving those from different suppliers, you should be looking at ApprovalMax to streamline that process. Or if you're looking at managing your spending in real time and you want to be aware of where those costs are being incurred, you should be looking at ApprovalMax. The other one would be not-for-profits or charities or churches. Any business where the compliance requirements are quite strict, or they get external audits done on a regular basis. They essentially need a system where they can get 2 or 3 different approvers to sign up on an invoice. So that becomes like a compliance requirement for them to set up a system like this. And on the similar sort of trajectory, investor-driven startups as well that are given access to external funds. Investors really want to know how the funds are being utilized, and at that point, it becomes quite important for them to streamline their accounts payable operations. And I would say one of the recent ones, and this would probably be more relevant to you directly, Stephen, is that a firm that has got a bookkeeping outsourced function, it becomes quite relevant for them as well, because it's a way of protecting yourself from giving the clients confidence that every invoice that is paid for is actually fully approved and it's going through the right channels and it's not leaking through the process, and it's basically a tighter process and it's going through proper processes before it's paid. So those are some of the instances, and in terms of size, we've seen different size of businesses, just a couple of employees in the firm in a business that are using ApprovalMax, or 200 employees in a business. So it just depends on how on what sort of problems you've got.
Yeah, that's good. That's really important, actually. We've got 2 main things I've just picked up from what you said. One for charities. We've got a number of charities on our particular portfolio at the moment, where we have restricted funds and unrestricted funds, and those restricted funds are usually managed by different people within the charity. So when an invoice comes in, for them to approve that, I think that's really important, to be able to record that audit trail as well. But then the other thing you've just said about us as bookkeepers, if we get the bills first and we process that into a platform like Xero or QuickBooks, the next stage is waiting payment. And so how does a business owner get comfort that we're not just going to pay any random bill that gets delivered? How are they going to check and have some kind of control over what goes through the system is allowed to go through the system? And I think that kind of leads me nicely on to my next question. How does this work? Because I'll use Xero as an example. As we're bookkeeping, we have this draft status, we have this waiting approval status, and we have this waiting payment status. Now, waiting payment is the only area where things are ready to be paid or they're in the reporting system. But how exactly does ApprovalMax interact with the process here?
Yeah, that's obviously a good point. Leads us nicely into the integration piece as well. So we have a very good integration with Xero in terms of how the data flows. We basically work off two stages, which is the awaiting approval stage in Xero and the awaiting payment stage. Now, we know awaiting approval, as the name suggests, is a stage where an invoice is waiting for an approval. But at that point, if there is a requirement for different people to sign off on an invoice, Xero currently doesn't have that feature. So that's where when you plug it in with ApprovalMax, we pull an invoice out of Xero's awaiting approval stage and then take it through an approval process or a workflow, which is fully customizable within ApprovalMax. And upon the final approval by the final decision maker, it goes back into the awaiting payment stage as a fully approved invoice with an audit trail and audit attachment that highlights all of the stages that the invoice has gone through. Now, if you really imagine this process, it becomes, it actually allows businesses to take non-accounting or non-Xero qualified staff outside of Xero altogether. So, you're essentially shielding the confidential information, right? Xero is your accounting software. It's got a lot of confidential information. But if you're using an external system that is then pushing fully authorized invoices back into Xero, you can start taking a lot of users that out of Xero that shouldn't actually have access to Xero in the first place. So that's effectively how the system kind of works at a high level.
That's great. I hear you mentioned the audit trail. I know from experience that's an attachment that's pushed into Xero with the name, the email, the IP address even of the user that's clicked approved at each stage. That is absolutely excellent for auditors to have a look at. And so I know we've got a lot of positive responses from auditors when they look at a client that has this completely recorded trail of who put what in where, who approved it, etc. And so also now that our invoices are approved, they're now in the reporting part of the system. So there's no report that's gone out where the invoice hasn't been approved yet. It's not in your P&L, it's not in your management accounts. And one thing I've seen as an accountant, I can get a report of all the things that haven't been approved yet, so I can accrue them. So I can still represent costs that you might be missing in your reporting, but that's for another stage. So
one thing I'd like to add, Stephen, there is that actually just recently we run some statistics on this as well, that how in a lot of cases, the businesses are making payments on invoices once a month, let's say on the 20th of the month. At that point, you might have 100 or 200 invoices you have to go through before a batch is created. But at that point, you may not remember what you actually ordered. You may not be checking each and every invoice in detail. Or if you are, you're spending a lot of time going through each individual invoice. If you need clarification on any invoice, you have to go back to so many other different people involved in the business. But what we have seen in our sort of statistics is that an invoice that goes through ApprovalMax is, so 25% of the invoices that are going through the ApprovalMax workflow are actually being approved in the first 2 hours, and 50% of those invoices are actually being, or 50% of total invoices are being approved in the first 24 hours, which effectively tells us that this has essentially scattered the work or scattered the invoice approval work throughout the month. So actually, an invoice, if a business is receiving an invoice from its supplier, they're actually probably checking it. They're properly checking it before it's going through the approval process and going into Xero. And that's quite good, because then you're not stressing out when it's payment time and trying to figure out where this has come from.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's already been through the machine. The right people that needed to see it have seen it. So payment is purely about cash flow, not about is this okay to pay.
Yeah, exactly.
You've mentioned about the approvals going to the users. How exactly do they receive those? Are we talking about emails? How does that work?
Oh, there's three options. So one is via email. So an email goes out to an approver and they make a decision. On the email itself, there's an approve and a reject button. There's the web app, which we'll probably talk about in a few moments. And then there's also a mobile app, which also I'd like to show what that looks like. And this multiple options. The user can decide when they want to receive notifications. So they can say, well, I just want to receive a summary on a Wednesday morning at 9 o'clock. And at that point, it's the system will automatically notify them that you've got invoices to approve. So there's a few different options there.
Incredible. I love anything that's in a smartphone app because it means I could do it anywhere. So I'm really interested in seeing that. If you've got anything you can show us, give us an example of how that works.
Absolutely. So before we go into the product side of things, I'd actually like to put some context in there. So let me share my screen. Okay. Can you please confirm if you can see my screen?
Yeah, that's all online for us.
Perfect. Okay, so look, we know there's more than 1,000 apps in the ecosystem, right? So it becomes quite hard to keep on top of all of these software technology. But a common place or a common pattern for us starts with zero. So zero being the system of record. That's where all your financial information stays. So at the bottom, we've got a few different couple of options, Zero and QuickBooks Online, and this is the platform that has got all the other apps connected. Now, this is an example of a very generic app stack. There will be variations, and I'm sure there will be other sort of different variations that people have come up with. But at the top, we've got the data digitization tools like Dex, HubDoc, Data Molino, Auto Entry, a few different options. We are OCR tool agnostic altogether, but these are the systems that effectively extract the information from an invoice as PDF sort of document. And then depending on the needs of the business, we effectively sit in the middle, offering two specific functions around bills and purchase order automation. So we like to define it we like to define it as either reactive spend control or proactive spend control. A reactive spend control would effectively be a spend management system where a bill has already been received from the supplier and it needs to be paid. Now you can use the ApprovalMax workflows to create approval processes. So each bill goes through a well-defined financial control process of decision making. However, one thing is that at that point, the bill has already been received, which means that you've probably already received the goods or services. So if you want to add an additional layer of financial controls, then businesses would want to introduce a purchase order function as well. Most businesses we work with, they start on the accounts payable function with bill automation, and then gradually, if they want to tighten their process further, they also introduce the purchase order process. And if a business is using both of those functions within ApprovalMax, that's a solid hybrid spend control management system, which then allows you to match bill with purchase order as well. And off the back of it, we've got reporting, which highlights any variances or differences between the actual value of the purchase order to the bill, or any bottlenecks that may come up. And then this is just another way to illustrate what ApprovalMax as its flagship workflow is. It's an end-to-end bill automation where, again, on the left-hand side, we've got a few different apps that extract information from a PDF invoice. It then goes into the awaiting approval stage within Xero. We take it out of there and then take it through the approval process, sending notifications to the decision makers. After the final decision is made on an invoice, it goes back into Xero under the awaiting payment stage, which effectively means it's a fully approved invoice and it's now ready to be paid. There's just one exception. With Dex, we actually have a direct integration as well. So it even skips this awaiting approval stage. It goes straight to ApprovalMax, which adds another beautiful sort of experience to the mix.
Brilliant. Brilliant, thank you. So in this particular series, we have looked at HubDoc, we've looked at Xero, and in ApprovalMax in this part of the process. So if you want to see more of those, check out the rest of the channel for the Xero and the HubDoc video. But Sahil, do you want to run us through a demo now?
Absolutely. I would actually start off with a little bit of an overview on what the mobile app looks like. Because effectively, if you think about it, once ApprovalMax is set up for businesses, this is what they will see on a regular basis. So this is an example of what a notification looks like on an iPhone. We've got a similar experience on Android as well. I'll just play this. So a notification is received, you click on that, it opens up within the app. And at that point, you've got the ability to snooze the notification as well. So it reminds you after 30 minutes or whatnot. There will be a source document that gets attached to this, this invoice as well. So you can view that from within the app. And if you are using purchase orders and bills, you've got the ability to match the two together, and then any discrepancies can be checked at that point. You will have the ability to see what the workflow looks like. So who is the next person who's going to receive a notification? Who is the next approver in the chain? You can leave comments on the invoice or the document as well. And these comments get added to the audit report that is generated. Once you're happy with it, hit the approve button, and it goes away, moves over to the next invoice for your approval. So it's very simple. And this, I think it's a 40-second video in which we've pretty much seen what on a regular basis an approver will see within the app and how quickly it is to make a decision. So that is the front end. Now, I'll just share my screen again and show you what the app looks like in the web version. So this is again an example of the web version where all the invoices that require an approval will be listed. And I am saying invoices, but it is the same for purchase orders. So any purchase orders that require a decision or an approval will also be listed here. So this invoice has all the details of the actual sort of transaction that has come through from the awaiting approval stage. And we'll actually see a Xero logo here. So it tells us that it's come from Xero. And the main sort of difference is that if it doesn't have a logo, that invoice is directly created within ApprovalMax, which is also the system has the ability to do so. At the bottom, it highlights the approval workflow. So this invoice is from Finance Box. They've given us the most amazing consulting and advice service. I'm sure you're happy with that, Stephen. And you're going to
I'm really impressed by the fee size.
You just need a few of such clients. So the fee is 105,000, and there's actually a reason why I put it to 105,000. I'll show you that in a few moments. But then it highlights at the bottom what this approval workflow is going to look like. So the first person in this chain is the head of department who needs to make a decision, then the CFO, and then the board of directors. So now if we go back to the sort of the approval workflow setup side of things, we've got a few different workflows. There's also workflows on the sales end, and these are the accounts payable ones. And they're pretty similar in how they're set up, but one of the things is that they are independent of each other. So they don't sort of cross over each other, and they can be set up separately. So there might be the different people are in charge of approving a purchase order versus for the invoice. So this is the workflow for the bill creation or the accounts payable creation. We have pulled it from Xero. And as I was saying, you've got the ability to create a bill in ApprovalMax as well. And then my workflow is such that it's a 3-step workflow. It's very easy to add any number of steps as you like, or drag and drop them. Within each step, there is an approval matrix. So the first one here I've got is a head of department, in which I have listed that based on the region. Now this is the tracking category within Xero. So when we connect when we turn on the integration between ApprovalMax and Xero, all the data syncs with the two systems. And this one, we know that this is the tracking category, and any invoice that has got tracking category of East, North, and South has to go through this person for approval. And if it's West, it has to go through this person for approval. In the second step of the process, I've got the CFO's approval. So this in this condition, what I've got is an amount-based rule. If the invoice is over $10,000, the second person to approve will be the CFO. And the final one here I've got is the board of directors. So if an invoice is over $100,000, it also requires the board's approval. And I also have an alternative rule here. So if an invoice is from Bayside Club, even though it may not be over $100,000, it will still need the board's approval. So that's just a simplified example of what an approval workflow can look like. We've seen some complicated one with like 26 different steps. It has to go to like 30, 40 different people. So the system is capable of managing that, and it's quite simple to use. One of the biggest challenges is probably going to be just figuring out who that person is and how you want to set up the workflows. And actual setup of the system is pretty simple. And now if you go back to this invoice, it highlights all of the things. So head of department, CFO, board of directors, because this invoice is over $100,000. So I'll just go back to one of the invoice. You can simply go to match to a purchase order. And if there is a purchase order sitting in the system, you've got the ability to match it. And here is an example of what the email approval looks like. So it is pretty simple to understand. You can simply say, okay, I'm happy with this invoice. I'm just going to hit approve. Takes me back to the app, but it actually says it has been approved. Well, it has been updated, so it's not going to tell me that, but it's that simple to make a decision on an invoice. Now, I am the administrator of the account. I'm the head of department. I'm the CFO and the board, so I'll have to approve it 3 times. And upon final approval, it goes away into 0 as a fully approved invoice. And this is what an audit report looks like as well. So this is the one we were talking about, fully approved. If we just refresh our screen, we've got the audit report here, which highlights, takes about 10 seconds. Here it is. It highlights all of the things that Stephen was saying before, which is the email, the date, the timestamp, all the relevant information of the invoice. The same audit report will also be present within 0. So as an auditor, if you're checking any of this data, you will see the same information in 0, highlighting that all of this invoice, all of the approval workflow processes have been followed for this particular invoice.
So one of the things that I think is quite specific about how useful that report is because now you're in 0, you can edit the invoice afterwards. And I know that's quite an area of risk, but what's great about the audit report is that it tells you what the company, the dates, the amounts, all those elements, what it was at the point of approval. So you can't change the audit report, even if you did change the 0 posting. So for any auditor looking at that, they can see that it's been changed, manipulated, pick up opportunities for fraud, etc., because the record changed.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we've also got a fraud detection sort of feature as well, which can be set up to avoid any of those things happening. So if I was to change this supplier name and add my own, and if I had bad intentions, I could just pay myself this. But within ApprovalMax, you can set it up to be such that if an invoice is changed after the full approval, then it gets picked up as a potential fraud detection element. And based on that, you can actually create reporting as well, that on a quarterly basis, the CFO of the business gets sent this report that highlights everything that has not passed through the right workflow, which is pretty powerful, in my opinion.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much. That has been really insightful for us to see how ApprovalMax works in the flesh. And how it adds control, accountability, and efficiency into our app stack as a best-in-class approval automation for accounts payable. Now, we just said accounts payable. You touched on it slightly earlier. It does sales approvals as well. And we use that with a couple of our clients where sales are raised automatically, which adds some efficiency, puts some control back in our clients' hands. But at the same time, you might not want that automatically going out to the client. So we've got this gate within ApprovalMax where sales raised automatically go straight to awaiting approval. And then the salesperson can be the person that is allocated their own clients, and they can approve before it goes out of the door. So it's semi-automated, but without the bottleneck of relying on an accounts payable, accounts receivable junior to generate those postings. I just want to quickly talk about how we use it. And we've touched on this a little bit already, but some of our clients, when they come on board, they are reluctant to lose control. They have been initially that one-man band that started a business, that they're good at doing the thing that they do. And so they wanted to get everything in and control that because it's their money and their lifeline. As they grow, they begin to bring other people in and outsource certain elements of their work to either their staff or external contractors, but they still want to keep a hold of the money. And so what ApprovalMax allows us to do is come in and give our clients the services that we offer, and be that front line to receive all the bills in the first place, but allow them to see and approve everything that goes through the system. We've demonstrated with those clients that if we become finance@client.com, we can digitize their entire routine and remove all those negatives that hold them back, that create that workload on their desks that they don't get around to, etc. We have the entry of bills automated straight from the inbox, straight into Xero and QuickBooks, so they land directly with the client waiting approval. And then for some clients that have a team that need to be responsible for different budget areas or different funds in charities, as we've touched on as well, we set that up so that it goes to the right person, and then the CFO or appropriate person secondly to add their approval on there as well. And our numbers are instantly available in all the reporting. So it achieves this kind of world of live accounting that it is that we're trying to sell. Sahil, thank you so much for ApprovalMax's time and your time today. We're really looking forward to seeing ApprovalMax being used and seeing future developments. We think it's a fantastic app. If people want to know more, how can they get hold of you?
They can, that's actually a point of advice I'd like to leave with as well, that if they, I think a system is only as good as the setup. So I personally see you guys as our partners, as experts in this field to set up the right workflows. Recently we did see one of their clients who failed an audit, and they came to ApprovalMax and they set it up, but they failed it again. But that was because they did not understand what the right process was in the chain to set it up with. And that's where I think I would say, you know, you guys are the experts in the field. You know what the policy needs to be within a business, and I think you fit in really well within the system to set up all of these integrations together. But yeah, if they'd like to get in touch with us, go to the website, send us an email, sales@approvalmax.com, and one of our expert team will get in touch.
Thank you. I did wonder for a second if you were going to say your contact details or my contact details. Thank you so much. For you viewers, please don't forget to like and share our video or subscribe to our channel if you'd like to see more content like this. There is a few more episodes in this particular series, so let us know if you'd like more contact. And thanks for watching. We'd love to talk to you soon.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you.